Welcome back to the critique. So, this piece covers a journalist witnessing the final hours before Tremane Wood's execution in Oklahoma, which was dramatically commuted at the last minute.
An incredibly powerful story.
It really is. And the content is so strong, I think we should jump right into the structure, because how these powerful pieces are put together is, I think, our first big area to focus on.
I agree. Let's start there.
Okay, so the writer has this just tremendous evidence about Wood's case. Like his brother Jake confessing to the murder and getting life, while Tremane gets death. And then, that original lawyer.
The one who later gave him that business card?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you got me at a bad time. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
It is. And that evidence is really the core of the whole systemic argument here. So my thought is this. That crucial evidence establishing his unequal culpability and, frankly, terrible legal help should be presented way earlier to really maximize the reader's investment in that countdown.
Right now, it's sort of buried in the middle, isn't it?
It is. It comes after the journalist has won the lottery to be a witness and is already on the road, already in that headspace.
So the weakness is that by the time we learn why this execution feels so unjust, we're already deep into the narrative.
Exactly. It kind of dilutes the power of those facts. They can't shape our view of the first half of the story because we don't know them yet. It shifts from being just a death row story to a story about a broken system, but that shift happens too late.
So the opportunity is to frame it from the start as a race, not just against time, but against a system we already know is flawed.
That's it, precisely. The suggestion is to just resequence it. Move all that material up to the front right after you first introduce Wood and his crime.
So then the whole journey, the whole countdown, is seen through that lens of injustice from the very beginning.
Yeah.
My only question there is, do you risk slowing down the opening? The writer starts with a very personal, internal kind of moral debate.
That's a fair question, but I actually think it makes that personal debate even stronger.
How so?
Because the journalist isn't just conflicted about seeing a man die, they're conflicted about seeing a man die who very likely shouldn't be there in the first place. The stakes are instantly higher.
Okay, I see that. It adds a layer.
It does. So, for a concrete example, when you first mentioned Tremane Wood's conviction for killing Ronnie Wipf in 2002.
Yeah.
Right after that. Before the lottery, before the drive, just drop in the details about Jake's confession, his life sentence, and that whole story about the lawyer. That way, the reader is rooting for the commutation before the countdown even really begins.
That makes a lot of sense. It turns every bureaucratic detail that follows into another piece of evidence of the system's indifference.
Yes. And speaking of that indifference,
let's go there, because the piece does an amazing job of balancing the author's internal state, the nausea, the headache, with these absurd external details.
Oh, they're fantastic. The Oklahoma corrections, "We Change Lives" email signature.
And the local reporters joking about the deteriorated snacks. It's just so grimly perfect.
It really is, and all that sets up the second big point, which is about the execution method itself. I think the material establishes a really compelling link between the waiting, the drugs they use, and basically psychological torture. That connection needs to be the central explicit point.
So the argument is that this isn't just bureaucracy, it's intentional cruelty?
I think so, yeah. The weakness right now is that the really deep analysis, like the part with Dr. Stevens talking about the risk of the drugs, it's powerful, but it feels a little separate from the psychological horror of the countdown.
It's like two different sections. Here's the science bit, and here's the emotional bit.
Right. And you've got Dr. Stevens explaining how Oklahoma uses midazolam, which is just a sedative, not a real anesthetic.
Compared to pentobarbital, which other states use to actually ensure unconsciousness.
And that is everything. Because if you use a paralytic so the person can't scream or move, but you haven't actually knocked them out properly,
they could be awake for the whole thing.
Conscious, paralyzed, and in agonizing pain. The suggestion is to really braid those two threads together, the physical risk of the drugs and the psychological torture of the waiting.
So the science becomes part of the horror.
It fuels the horror. And when you do that, the lawyer's final quote at the end, because they don't give a shit, it just lands with so much more force. It's not just an opinion anymore. It's a conclusion backed by, specific pharmacological choices.
So how do you do that without grinding the narrative to a halt? Explaining midazolam versus pentobarbital in the middle of a 4:30 a.m. drive could be tricky.
You do it with context, not a lecture. Weave it into the journalist's own anxiety.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, when the author is on that drive debating whether they can watch a man be killed, right there, integrate a line about it, something like, the drive was agonizing, made worse knowing the state used a drug that might not even work, that could leave him conscious and burning from the inside.
So you're not explaining the science, you're explaining the fear of the science.
Exactly. You make the drug choice another character in the drama, another part of the ticking clock. It's not just if he'll die, but how horribly he might die.
And then you can use that detail about Tremane collapsing when he heard the news.
Yes, you use that physical reaction to show the sheer physical toll of the state's delay, of the torture they put him through right up to the last second. It all connects.
Which brings me to the third and maybe the most, jaw-dropping detail in the whole piece.
I think I know what you're going to say.
The victim's family.
Yep. They didn't even want the execution.
And that detail is just sort of tucked away near the end, in the final minutes of the wait. It's almost a throwaway line.
And it shouldn't be. That detail is morally overwhelming. Strategic placement of the victim's family's dissent provides this powerful counter-narrative that I think deserves a much, much earlier focus.
The weakness is just placement, pure and simple. It comes so late that it's a surprise twist, when it should be the moral foundation for the entire story.
Right. It limits its power. By the time we find out, the countdown is almost over. If we knew that from the beginning, the whole thing would read differently.
The whole thing would feel even more pointless and cruel.
Infinitely more. Because then the question isn't just about Tremane's guilt. The question becomes, who is this execution actually for?
If it isn't for the victim's family,
Then it's just for the state. It's pure bureaucratic performance. The suggestion is to introduce the family's opposition much earlier, to ground the story in that moral complexity right away.
is there a risk, though, that you give away that twist too early? Does it reduce the drama of that 11th hour scramble?
I think the reward is bigger than the risk. It shifts the focus from simple drama to a profound critique of the state. It supports that image of the governor, like a king in his palace, acting against the wishes of everyone involved.
Okay, so the reader knows from the outset that the only entity pushing for this is the government itself.
Yes, it's a much stronger indictment.
So a concrete way to do that when the author first wins a lottery.
Exactly. There's that line, I set to work contacting Wood's friends, his lawyer, his family, and the family of the murder victim, Ronnie Wipf.
You're saying right there, in that moment, add it in.
Yes. Add a sentence right after that. Something like, a process that soon revealed a stunning fact. Wipf's family didn't want the execution to happen at all. Boom, you've set the moral compass for everything that follows.
Wow. Yeah, okay, this is all incredibly helpful. So to recap, the three main takeaways for this piece, which is already so strong.
It is. This is about making it undeniable.
First, take that evidence about the flawed defense, the lawyer, the brother's confession, and move it right to the front. Establish the injustice immediately.
Yep, front-load the injustice. Second, really weave the analysis of the execution drugs into the psychological narrative. Show, don't just tell, how the state's choices contribute to the cruelty.
And finally, introduce the victim's family's opposition much earlier. Make it a foundational element of the story, not a late-stage revelation.
Exactly. You've captured this agonizing experience so well. These changes will just make sure that the indictment of the system is sharp, clear, and absolutely inescapable from the first paragraph to the last.
This is fantastic stuff. We would really love to see how you work with this feedback. Please feel free to submit the revised piece back to us, and we can take another look.